long
No.
ID. Justice Alito. Flaggate continues, but I have more thoughts because I
Okay.
now feel more strongly than I did before. Hold on one sec, because I want to find the... Oh, it came right up. Okay. So if you remember, before when this first came out, I said, look, I don't like it. I don't think the flag should have been flown upside down, but there's no evidence really tying this to Justice Alito. There's no evidence tying her to knowing that it was a quote unquote stop the steal symbol. And that I thought at best, even if all those things like turned out to be, that somehow there was some connection here, or just based on the evidence we have, this was like a 3 out of 10 story without more information, not a 9 out of 10 story. I feel so much more strongly about all of this now because they've also now gone after Justice Barrett this week, arguing that her husband, who's an attorney, but who does not do Supreme Court work, should have to disclose all of his clients publicly because she's financially benefiting from his clients. And they specifically pointed out that one of his clients is Fox News. Okay, this is a big problem with spouses then, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg's husband was also an attorney, but he actually did have cases before the Supreme Court from his law firm. She didn't recuse from them, let alone that they listed the clients. Lawyers can't list all their clients. Now, maybe you could have some rule where, like, if the client is public or okay with it, spouses, you should be allowed to be married if you're on the Supreme Court, and your spouse should be allowed to have a job. They should be allowed to have political opinions. And to me, the sort of steady drumbeat of going after conservative justices for things that were never enforced against liberal justices is evidence of the motive. And the motive is to undermine the institution because they feel like the institution has been captured by the right. Okay. Second point on Justice Alito specifically, he answered some questions to Congress in saying that he was not going to recuse himself. And I found it really funny. So, not so funny, haha, but still. Here's what he said. My wife is fond of flying flags. I am not. My wife was solely responsible for having flagpoles put up at our residence and our vacation home and has flown a wide variety of flags over the years. So, David, her love language is flags. So when someone made her mad...
Or her hate language.
That's fine. Yeah, her language is flag. She speaks in flags. So this gets to the point here. People have different marriages, y'all. And I felt like there was a whole lot of discussion of what it, quote, must have happened behind closed doors in their house. Well, here's what Justice Alito says. And again, there's just no reason not to believe him. This isn't someone who has been caught lying to the public before or lacks credibility. And so I don't understand why you don't take his statements at face value, except that you don't like his decisions. Okay. As I have stated publicly, I had nothing whatsoever to do with the flying of that flag. I was not even aware of the upside down flag until it was called to my attention. As soon as I saw it, I asked my wife to take it down. But for several days, she refused. And David, I gotta say, I'm feeling that. I understand that because really at the end of the day, you jointly own this house. She is entitled to the full use of the property. And I just mean legally here. So if your wife flies a flag you don't like and you can't work it out, your choices are to let her continue flying the flag and stay married, or get divorced or move out in some other capacity. And if your wife's language is flags and she's angry, and so she decides to fly this distress flag that had been used by the George Floyd protesters, by the Stop the Steal protesters, basically by protesters across the ideological spectrum. And you're like, hey, but sweetheart, they're going to think that you're associating yourself with Stop the Steal. And then she goes into some sort of rant about how dare you accuse her of that. And that flag's staying up because you know what they called me. They followed me in front of my home and their car and called me the C word. And then she goes to bed and refuses to take down the flag. I don't know, David. What are you supposed to do? And to the point, why should Justice Alito have to resign when there's zero evidence that he had anything to do with that? Sorry, recuse. I mean, they'd love for him to resign, but recuse. Right. That has nothing to do with his beliefs at all. And again, I point out the the Justice Ginsburg, no calls for her to recuse based on her own political statements. And on the appeal to heaven flag, I just find that one so ridiculous. The San Francisco City Council building, Town Hall, what's that called? What's the City Council building called? City Hall. City Hall.
City Hall. There you go.
San Francisco City Hall took down their appeal to heaven flag that they've been flying for years. They took it down this week. So obviously, no, people didn't know that was a Stop the Steal symbol. Give me a break.
So, gonna disagree with some of that. We have conflicting accounts of all of this with the neighbors.
With the neighbors, sure, but we don't have conflicting accounts from Justice Alito. The neighbors don't say Justice Alito was involved at all. They never saw him. They never talked to him.
No, we do have we have conflicting accounts between Justice Alito and the neighbors. Justice Alito's story and the neighbor's story does not match.
In what way?
Multiple ways. Timing, when the C word happened, who said the C word.
Well, except we also have the Washington Post reporter who interviews Mrs. Alito on Inauguration Day, and she says that she's doing it because of the neighbors. The neighbors say the conflict didn't happen until February 15th. So that doesn't make any sense, but because we have a Washington Post reporter who had the reporting on January 21st.
Well, some of it was prior to, so the question about the C word is the C word appears to have been at a different time, perhaps.
That seems like it probably happened after.
Yeah, and from a different person, not from a guy, from the girl.
He never said it was a guy, did he?
That was, I believe that he did say that it was the guy.
No, because the neighbor's a woman and the daughter's a woman. It was always she when it came from the justice.
Okay.
He always said she.
But
I agree, the timing of the C word does seem to be off. Meh.
Yeah. These things, look, I think one of the things that's happening here is that conservatives are saying, I believe Justice Alito. And if you're not a conservative, if you're not somebody who's had a lot of regard for Justice Alito in the past, Justice Alito coming out with a statement it refutes the story. It doesn't rebut the story, or it rebuts, it doesn't refute. In other words, it is an alternative account. And generally, when we have alternative accounts from leading political figures, we don't say, well, that settles it. What we say is that's one account and here's another account. And we try as best as we can to sort through the evidence.
Their account has nothing to do with Justice Alito. So their account, I agree, maybe goes to how much they'd pissed off Mrs. Alito before she started flying the flag upside down. But they have no evidence that she had any relationship to Stop the Steal. And more to the point, there's no evidence tying Justice Alito to any of it, which is the whole point. Nobody cares about Mrs. Alito. They're doing it because they want Justice Alito to have to recuse himself.
But if Justice Alito is saying things that are being refuted as a matter of fact, then one of the issues is how much that it raises questions about the entire affair. And the question that I have here is, look, guys, I get it. I am invested in the court as an institution as well. I really am. But this is putting an ordinary American, come on. Come on. This is putting an ordinary American in a position where they're looking at this and saying, a Supreme Court justice is flying, they're outside of their house, is flying a flag that at that time was absolutely associated with the Stop the Steal movement.
To be very online right, it was. But I did not know about it, and there's no evidence that they did either. But okay.
That's not appropriate. Full stop, period. And then all the conservative people are really mad that you're going and you're saying, well, Justice Alito, where's the evidence that Justice Alito was directly involved in this? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this shouldn't be there, period. It should not be there. And it shouldn't be at the
That's
associate
fine, but
justice.
If your wife does something you don't like, what are you supposed to do?
I know, but
and
we're
they're not,
making a lot of...
I'm this is a feminist rant for me, because the justices still are majority male, and their wives seem to come under a lot of scrutiny. Mrs. Roberts, Mrs. Thomas, Mrs. Alito. Now I will acknowledge Mr. Barrett is a man, But all of them get tons of scrutiny as spouses for having jobs.
Well, no. No.
Yes.
They're under scrutiny because Jenny Thomas was absolutely out of control
Okay, that's one
before
example.
January
How about
6th.
Mrs. Roberts? Is she out of control because she works
No,
at a
but
legal
not
recruiting firm?
one
That
of
she
these things
left
is
her
not
legal
like
practice?
no, one of these things is not like the other. To say that
But they're all
I'm gonna
getting it, David. Doesn't that go to the intent and purpose of this? They're attacking all of the spouses.
yeah, they're attacking all the spouses, and some of them are meritorious, and some of them are not. Jenny Thomas and Martha Ann Alito behaved abysmally. If that is
Not abysmally.
abysmally like that, spitting at like this car, like these people called the police. This is ridiculous. Like the
And the
level of
police told them
juvenile,
they were being silly.
no, the level of behavior being relayed from Martha Ann Alito is absurd. Like it's absurd behavior. Jenny Thomas's behavior, absurd with a capital A. This kind of behavior is not acceptable.
Those are
And
totally different. Jenny Thomas inserted herself into the political process, right? She's texting the White House chief of staff. I'm going to
Right.
give you all of that.
Yeah.
Martha Ann Alito didn't assert herself into anything. She had a disagreement with a neighbor, and there's a disagreement over what happened, right? She says that they followed her back to her house to scream at her. They say that she glared at them while driving by their house, so they called the police, and the police were like, "We don't do this, ma'am. Ma'am, this is a Wendy's." Like, I get it, but like she didn't insert herself in anything. She didn't call the media to come look at her upside down flag. So again, this is private conduct by a private individual who is married to a Supreme Court justice.
If you completely
Why isn't
credit
she
all of
entitled to
this.
that?
Yeah, no, I don't completely credit.
You think Justice Alito was secretly involved and the neighbors just happen to have they don't even say that he was.
No, it's absolutely clear that that he, so far, that there's no allegation that he got directly involved with these neighbors at all. But it's absolutely inappropriate to have that flag flying at his house.
Yes, and he told her to take it down, according to him, and she refused. Okay,
I know, and
why don't you believe that? And if you don't, what do you think happened, and with what evidence?
Well, I'm not saying that I disbelieve it, but I'm also not saying that that settles it just because he said it. And that's not how we treat any public official.
What other evidence could there be? What do you want, her to come out and say it too? Like, there's no one else privy to it.
What we're left with, Sarah, is people are making definitive statements about their marriage. Like, oh, it's obvious that he's fine and she's off the reservation in some way. And we can't crawl into that marriage. We don't know. There are people, because of different kinds of personal experiences that people have.
So you think he should recuse because we can't prove
No,
that
I've never said he should recuse. I've said this is serious. He has a duty to sit unless he's violating the actual rules of ethics of the court. He's got a duty to sit. I've never said he needs to recuse, but it bothers me how aggressively defensive people are of Justice Alito, giving him a benefit of the doubt here that we all know they don't give to other public officials when they put out their own statement about things. That doesn't settle this. The bottom line is that never should have happened. That's extremely inappropriate that happened. And it never should have happened. And that's a separate question from the recusal, which is a legal analysis. But putting that out and having that there at that time is utterly inappropriate, just utterly inappropriate. And then to crawl in and say, but it's all her. Yeah, sure, maybe, even probably. But I'm deeply disturbed that occurred, that actually occurred. That is unacceptable.
I guess I just don't
behavior.
understand why Nancy and I shouldn't be able to have public statements that you and Scott disagree with, that people don't attribute to you and Scott. Like, we get to say what we want, and you're allowed to say you disagree with it, and there's no evidence that you don't. And so we're just going to now be like, well, Scott probably agrees because they're still married, and if he really didn't agree, he should have left her.
That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, in my position as a, whatever, which is not nearly the position that Justice Alito has. I'm an opinion columnist. I'm not a Supreme Court justice. But even as an opinion columnist, and even with a spouse,
so Nancy comes out and says something you don't agree with, and you say, Nancy, that could really hurt my career. Don't say that. And she's like, you know what? It's what I think, and I'm gonna say it. Now what?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. A flag that I don't agree with is not flying in front of my house.
You're going to get in a physical confrontation with your wife over it?
I just take down the flag.
And
I mean,
she's
it's
going to
a
be there
flag that
preventing you. You're really
look,
going to, like, you two
if
are going to have a
she's
fight in the front yard about it?
no, we're not going to have a fight. A flag I don't agree with is not flying at my house. Period.
And she says
Like,
it is.
You're making a lot of assumptions about.
He says that he asked her to take it down and she refused. So
Right.
either you're going to physically overpower your wife or you're going to leave it up until she takes it down. She put it up. You're going to wait till she's asleep? Like, what kind of shenanigans are happening?
She physically restrained me from taking down the
No.
flag. Okay,
No, you're
so
right.
let's not get a little dramatic here. It's talking about
she says, "Don't you dare touch my flag." You're just going to do it anyway.
Coming down. That flag's coming down. It's in front of my house too. Period. End of discussion. And if
that's not the way my marriage works.
If I had a
if I tell Scott to leave that and he touches it, he's not sleeping at this house anymore.
I'll tell you one thing. If I had a position as Associate Justice at the Supreme Court, that's not flying in front of my house. Period. End of discussion. No way, no how. No way, no how.
And so David and I can never get married.
Good thing we already are.
All right. I will agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I like it.